Perfect. We'll give everybody a quick second to join in. Great to see some friendly names in the attendance list, and we look forward to a great webinar tonight. So let's jump in. First of all, guys, couldn't be more excited. I had the privilege of co-lecturing with this individual in beautiful Newport Beach, California, and I said, boy, oh boy, what a unique topic about how to figure out growth and crack the code with associates and retention and how to build in with that and retain them, those that want equity, those that don't want equity, those that want this, those that want to branch out and go on their own way. And I was so impressed with this individual's talk that I said, like, I've got to bring into the podcast, the webinar. So it's a privilege, guys. Dr. Eric J. Roman, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciated. And we were also one of the four Erics that were all together at the same event.
I don't know that it's legal to actually have more Erics than that in a single environment. So we definitely, California law and statute here in Newport Beach, we push the envelope. But Eric, it's been so much fun getting to know you. It's funny. It's like very kindred in like the stories and the experiences that both of us have had. So I have loved it. And I'm really excited to be able to share time with you tonight and maybe tell some shared stories.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We are recording this again. We are running this as a good CE, so there should be some great learning pieces, some good takeaways. We'll go through my section at a high level, right, and then pass it over to Dr. Roman. For those of you that don't know Dr. Roman, a really unique perspective, and we'll share all different sort of core aspects of it. But really, one of dentistry's leading voices on dental development. The other big piece lately is leadership and scalable people systems, which I've got a ton of questions for you, but that's arguably the biggest challenge. And we're here to try to dig into both of those, right? The number one hit to overhead is people. The number two is tenancy expense. So if you're sick and tired of paying big money, right, and having staff turnover, those sorts of things are key. Why? Why should we? Why should you listen to us tonight? Well, first of all, Dr. Roman, former DSO CEO, whose organizations produced over 200 million in care under the leadership. Right, Eric brings truly an unmatched operational, cultural insight into the profession. So, if you're thinking of challenging staff, right, who's going to be the right fit? When to make the tough decisions with those associates. Are truly some incredible resources there. Um, Today, now serving as the founder of the Dental Associates Group and the Joyful Growth, right? Helping dental groups achieve substantial, sustainable performance through purpose people playbooks. His coaching
Yeah.
systems have certainly helped. It supported billions in annual DSO revenue, helping leaders create organizations defined by healthy dentists, healthy teams, and healthy lives. And all sorts of great resources that we'll pull up afterwards. So, again, Dr. Roman, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thanks to be with you, Eric. This is a good day for us. This is a very good day for us. And yeah, I like that. Healthy patients, healthy dentists, healthy teams. Boy, that sounds great. Who has that?
Doesn't it sound fantastic? I can tell you, my godfather, who tore his rotator cuff golfing, hitting the wrong divot at the in late 40s, early 50s, many decades ago. Healthy goes a long way, especially when you're one of the sole breadwinners in your clinic. So maybe we've lots has changed, certainly, Eric, since we got together sort of mid to late summer. What are
Yeah.
you seeing now for trends, updates, and challenges?
Oh man. So, I mean, the majority of my time is spent in dental groups. It could be a single location with a number of doctors, or it could be 50 locations with tons of doctors, right? Um, but there's a theme that I've been sitting in a lot lately, and I'm finding that there's this high degree of frustration. Uh, Ownership has been listening to their dentist complain and or just not perform, and then they're trying to do something about it. You said you wanted more training. You said you wanted more of this, so more of that, and yet what we're finding is that it seems like the vast majority of dentists aren't responding to it. They're like, "Hey, oh, that's really nice that you're providing this. That sounds like a lot of work for me to put in to actually like be better, be more productive." I've just had a ton of dentists in the past 4 or 5 weeks that have been really leaders in their companies that are really frustrated by that. And I guess the long story short is there's this pervasive feeling that today's dentist isn't super motivated or willing to do what's required to be great. And so I'm hearing a lot of that. Of
Hmm.
course, what I'm also hearing is I don't think that we'll ever. A part of me wonders if we'll ever be fully staffed in dental office ever again. Like everybody's got a hole somewhere, you know? And so those are a couple of trends I'm hearing. How about you, Eric?
Interesting. Yeah, and actually we'll customize some of the content. I'll pull a quick poll. So again, thank you for joining, and we want to keep this interactive. We are live. So many of these things are recorded, but um, yeah, I mean it's interesting. I would argue that with some have had an incredible year, some of which had a brutal Q4 for whatever reason. But by and large, I think it's a unique perspective where there's a perspective of apathy, I think is one way of looking at it, right?
Oh,
A lot of I can't tell you how many doctors are
mhm.
the office manager comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, the landlord told us, we forgot to renew our lease and we needed to follow up on creating a strategy and plan, and now our lease is up and we forgot to exercise our option and we got to sign this today or else."
Yeah.
And after beating up their dental supply partner again and again and again to save another 5% here, 10% there, etc., the landlord goes around and increases rent by 32%.
You fought for that margin for an entire year in every department. It cost you blood, sweat, and tears, and now it's gone. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Margins are thinner than they've ever been inside of our industry.
Which is interesting because, are we billing to, right, the level that we could or should? And that's a whole other conversation in some.
Yeah.
The other interesting pieces, again, are just as we continue to provide great services now post-COVID, oral care is healthcare. But it really comes down to, again, exactly that. How do we make the smart decisions? How do we make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the unknown? And scaling smarter is the theme for tonight. So obviously, Dr. Roman can really speak to that um, in terms of DSOs going from single locations, multi locations, right, multi rooftops, etc. So yeah, the biggest thing we're seeing is an apathy, is a level of, oh well, I'll just I'll see you if my landlord wants to negotiate, or oh well, maybe it's not going to be too bad, or oh I'll just I'll try to figure it out myself type of thing, or oh I'll just wait and procrastinate on it. And what
Yeah.
we've realized is that term equals leverage. 33 years in business. Cirrus Consulting Group has seen one core trend. The earlier you start, the higher the leverage, right? But having a plan makes it insurmountable. So, just from a quick, again, we've got an entrance poll. Please take a quick second, guys, to update, and we'll help customize some of the content tonight. So, yeah, let's jump through and let's jump right in. So, yes, as myself, conflict of interest statement. I am the owner of Cirrus Consulting Group, and we will process the CEs. Give us about 10 business days for it, and we'll follow up for you if we're missing some of that information. Is recorded as well for best practices. Just look at some data. There is some interesting pieces because the trends. We were joking about Newport. I was actually in LA last week. Flew into LAX, and then my flight was canceled on the way back, and then delayed on the way back again. And good old LAX, and the biggest winter storm in recent memory. What we continue to see, let it be Manhattan, Los Angeles, or sort of anything in between, is that it's shifting. It has been a very tenant-friendly market for quite some time, and we are starting to see with some of the back to the office, back to work, investments, right? The high rises, the commercial space trend has certainly been growing significantly. So what was a very tenant-friendly market is still there, but certainly we are seeing landlords perhaps being a little more bullish or
Mm.
a little more, they're holding to their guns a little more, which just means there needs to be more data, more structure, and more planning. But it really does come to the fact that we are at a key time, and the more time equals leverage. With that being said, I was at a Top Golf not too long ago with some of the dental supply companies we were with, but this is just an example of some of the data that we can look at specifically for your building. So when we look at rental rates, vacancies, comp reports, uh, you know, asking yourself, when was the last time you compared your rent to market price? As we talk about scaling, scaling is so much easier when you have the cash in the bank, when you have as much EBITDA as possible. When the banks or private equity or otherwise love to see, right, as low of an overhead as possible. And obviously, if you are paying anything more than 8%, in some cases even 7% on rent of every dollar that comes in, then it's probably a perfect opportunity to rethink that and look to get some professional assistance in the negotiation or renegotiation of your rent. But that's the shift. So as Dr. Roman's going to share on, some of the personnel and working with associates, etc. It's a framing. It's a how do we look at that associate, right? Is that a partner? Is that a future partner? But equally the lease. And the one thing I would ask each of you for is to not think of it as that, oh, the broker told me it's, $30 per square foot, and that's how I look at it. Take the monthly payment, multiply by the annual increase, and multiply by the 26 and a half years on average that the doctor is in the same location. And it represents a check, the biggest check that you will sign in your personal or professional lives. So, with that being said, let's think differently. So, again, how do we scale smart? Part of it is looking at all the different financial variables. And Eric, I'll pass to you because I know you've had some wild stories with the leases, but if you're looking at it through the eyes of the landlord, you, doctors, are the best tenant on the planet. You have the highest build out costs. Easily now, 350, 450. I was with some some of the Hawaii team recently, and it's up to $500 per square foot. Unbelievable. So, when looking at it from that perspective, you're in the same location for 26 and a half years. The default rate of a dentist is less than 0.5%. The default rate for a restaurant, easily over 90%. So, right, looking at these, the base rents, annual increases, common area maintenance, so many times, Dr. Roman, it's, oh, well, I just thought it was standard, or oh, my team, my lawyer, my broker, etc., just said, oh, it was a standard form lease, or oh, this is just a standard agreement,
Yep.
right? Without really looking at all of the different levers that we can pull from with the landlords.
Yeah, whose job is it to address that ice outside my door? Was an interesting question we had after somebody slipped and fell. Keep going, E.
Aha, right. So, from that perspective, whether you're buying, whether you're leasing, regardless, as you're scaling, it's important to have someone on your team, first of all, that just does this to help guide and advise you, right? Obviously, if you're working with a practice broker, and we've worked with many of them, top brokers across the country, they're going to obviously show, hey, here's all the spaces that I'm having for list, and young associate, hey, you should definitely buy this clinic I have up for sale, right? The real estate broker, hey, don't buy that one. Hey, I've got a brand new box that would be perfect for a new dental clinic, right? Or hey, buy this building. The banks obviously want to, right, encourage as much lending as possible. So hey, let's do everything, right? With that being said, regardless of the path you choose, whether you buy the physical space or you lease the physical space, right? The lease still becomes important. So yes, even if you're the landlord, to create the lease to separate the real estate corporation from the practice corporation, a lease is still needed. So let's do a little bit of an exercise. So just to look at it here, Dr. Roman, we've got roughly 62% of the attendees have a lease. Sorry, 82% have a lease. So I'll touch on this briefly for the rest that own. In terms of describing the situation, roughly about a quarter are planning to open or relocate the clinic. Another similar amount planning to acquire. Another equal amount, give or take, planning to stay put, renegotiate. And then some with none of the above. So that could be coming from thinking and or right being in a dental office in a variety of capacities. Perfect. So in terms of those, we'll touch on leverage in terms of structuring, and roughly 60% are planning to start or buying a clinic. And great, perfect. So again, for the few of you that own, these are some good questions to ask, which is who owns the building, who owns the practice, right? Are you paying yourself rent? How are you tracking some of those expenses? Slips and falls, Dr. Roman was a perfect one. Who is actually responsible for salting, sanding, ice in Utah or otherwise? And especially in today's skiing weather, the last thing you want is someone skiing or sliding into your clinic on a Monday morning. The leasing. So again, for the three-quarters of you that have a leased space, I did put through, and I think a few of you mentioned not sure as to when the lease is coming up for renewal. So if you're not sure, please, right, first thing to do tomorrow is double check when does your lease expire? Do you have any options to renew? And what does that option to renew deadline look like? And especially if the lease is coming up for renewal in the next 2 years, the earlier you start, the better, the higher the leverage. Why? Because to pick up and relocate a clinic can easily be 18 to 24 months to do so. All those sorts of things, and then making sure that there's an understanding as to the saleability of the clinic, um, which is a perfect little segue. So, Dr. Roman, from your perspective, you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly in Utah and
Yeah.
beyond, but maybe from a high level, in terms of scaling, the physical real estate, the space, and the lease, any
Mhm.
best practices you can share with some of your peers this evening?
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic. Like this isn't my intentional plug, but my groups grew because of who I had in place that was managing this side of the business and protecting this side of the business. If you really think about it, if you're growing either through new locations or even through acquisition, this was the critical piece. If you're not, if you haven't spent your whole life as a real estate expert, this is a hole and a kink in your armor. And so it was funny because, you're asking who were the who's in your life, Eric? And I built my groups in the East Coast. And they're like, Eric, who were your who's that made it possible? My number one person was the guy that led my real estate side, that was making sure that my leases were tight, were well done. I mean, I have stories like I just recently put an offer in a practice. It was the perfect practice, and I was overpaying because it was such a great practice in Colorado. I was so excited to be giving this doctor more than what the practice was worth and what other people were offering because it was perfect for me. And yet, in my LOI, I said, I have to be able to see the lease renewal because I've asked 3 times and you haven't shown me the lease renewal.
Ah,
And turns out, not only was the lease expiring in 6 months, and he didn't know it, and I believe he really didn't know it, but when we went to the landlord said, I'm not renewing the lease because I have this big other company that I want to come have in here. And I just hadn't told you yet because you weren't at your, and so he was going to wait till 60 days and give him that notice. He was going to,
oh,
because that's what the terms allowed the landlord to do.
sure.
He had
Or less,
60 days
30 days.
notice.
Yeah.
And so, like, can you move your practice on 60 days? Yeah. And then one other story that I had, Eric, I had a coaching client who was in the process of selling their group, and they had spent a year going through the process of getting ready for sale, checking all the suitors. We were talking about a transaction that would have been over $20 million. They had negotiated everything, paid all the attorneys, everything was set. And they got to the point in the process where they had to do the lease transfer. And the landlord had the ability to block the lease transfer to the next company. The landlord didn't allow the deal to go through. Deal gone. But they still had to pay their attorneys. And so, I mean, like, just 2 stories that talk about how critical this can be. I mean, and I've got more. I can do this all day on horrible lease stories because lease and purchase and structure, like, if somebody's not covering this, you got a problem.
I was I was excuse me, I was with some of the DDS match guys in Southern California as well as um, the Bank of America, etc. And they are reiterating what we've seen for years, which is that the same thing, right? The number one reason why a practice deal dies at the 11th hour is purely because of the lease agreement.
Oh,
So we'll touch on that example, but how do we get proactive to it? I appreciate you sharing. I mean, when we talk about risk and exposure, as Dr. Roman was mentioning, I mean, things like a death and disability clause is something that we helped coin 33 years ago with dental specific language, right? You might not be deemed disabled, but you're certainly not practicing wet finger dentistry. So, what does that mean to the lease? How do you prepare yourself? A recent example we saw, following through on those some of those case examples, was a doctor who was in their early 40s, built out a beautiful six operatory clinic. 3 weeks prior to the grand opening, died of a massive heart attack. Fully built out clinic, no doctor, no patients. Right? We don't need Dr. Roman to do the analysis to find out how much that was worth. It was zero, actually less than zero. Bank got the pound of flesh from the life insurance policy, but unfortunately, the landlord went back to the spouse and said, unfortunately, Mrs. Smith, per Article 76, subsection 2, this is binding now to you. Therefore, we now not only are responsible for the $9,000 a month, but also increasing at 4% per year for the remaining 9.5 years on the lease. So it was a nightmare process to try to get the leases signed. Every doctor in the area knew the situation. We're offering pennies on the dollar. So these are just some of the pieces: termination right, exits, right, or the ability to structure and renegotiate differently is key. And of course, Eric, as you mentioned, that saleability, right? Don't be surprised. You cannot sell without the landlord's prior written consent.
yep.
Um, so good news. Eric is going to go through each one of these clauses in great nauseum detail, just to touch on all the red flags and challenges he's had. Kidding, but these are, in all seriousness, a great one to screenshot or otherwise, because these are just some of the dozens and dozens of clauses that we do focus on and are negotiable. We've had the privilege now of doing over 13,000 of these healthcare leases. And these are just some of the clauses that if you're not aware of what they are or what impact they can have to the business, the first step is truly knowing. So let's just touch on that one example. And then, Eric, I look forward to finding out a ton more on the people and the scaling pieces that you share with your clients. But the assignment clause is exactly what Eric was mentioning was you cannot sell your clinic without the landlord's prior written consent. So if you're getting your practice evaluated and you're in anywhere across Canada, the US, right, one of the first things that practice brokers will look at is looking at it through the eyes of the buyer. And that's this assignment clause. Assignment subletting, it can be under a few different titles, but ultimately it describes the mechanisms and if, when, and how, and what the process looks like for you to assign your current lease from seller to buyer. Now, so many doctors think, Eric, I'll just wait until, I get towards the end and then I'll figure it out, just as you mentioned. But from that perspective, right, and it's not uncommon, but it's a selfish way of looking at it. You need to look at it through the eyes of the buyer, right? And in this case, Dr. Roman was about to buy this clinic, but even the banks will not issue a long-term loan if there's insufficient term on the lease. So if you think, oh, well, I'll just keep a month to month lease and I'll just figure it out, that again gives the landlord the ability to give 30 days notice and you are toast, doctor. So, how do we start? How do we plan this? So, here's just one example. So, take a quick second and try to look for the first red flag in this lease. And Eric, I'll challenge you to see if you've seen the first one or what was the first red flag you might have noticed here.
I mean, consent to the landlord.
Bang on, right? Which is the big one, which is, gosh, so many times oh well, we'll just the M&A lawyers have said, we'll just get to it at the end, or oh we'll figure we got to do this first, we got to do that first, we got to rack all this time up to do shareholders agreement, an agreement of purchase and sale, and we need to figure out the corporations, and we need to figure out all the carve outs, and we'll just figure it out down the road. But again, Eric, as you mentioned, that's pretty remarkable considering the landlord could just say no and torpedo the whole deal. Or even worse, the landlord can say yes, can say no, or as I saw recently in San Francisco, right, the landlord could actually terminate the lease and engage directly with the potential buyer. And I was doing a course in Vegas, and a doctor came up afterwards and said, yeah, my wife and I were buying this clinic. I went to the landlord to introduce myself, and the landlord said, gosh, how much are you paying for that? Right. So, well, I don't know, about $1 million. Why? Why? Just, come do a deal with me. I own the space, right? I'll just, the lease is coming up soon. I'll just do a deal directly with you. Imagine the impact to the value of that clinic. Ask yourself, how much is that clinic worth without the keys? Number three, what happens if the landlord can turn around and dramatically increase these rents? Or number four, if you see anywhere in terms of the word consideration in your lease, flag it, highlight it, circle it with big red pen. Landlords now are increasingly adding language that will entitle them to a percentage of the practice sale proceeds. I saw one recently so brash in the assignment agreement, it basically said, in consideration for my signature, assigning it from Dr. Eric to Dr. Frank, right, that the landlord required $50,000 in cash to facilitate the transfer. Black and white, signed off, DocuSign, etc. And lastly, at the very bottom, uh, I will bet each of you lunch that you will have the exact same clause that basically states that in the event that you sell and the landlord approves the sale, you will still remain as personally and or corporately liable as you are today, as long as that lease continues to run through indefinitely. So, bottom line, hundreds of thousands of dollars of risk, which could have been completely avoidable. How do we prevent all of this? Again, scaling, hacks, etc. Start the process 2 years prior. What are landlords trying to do? Defer, deflect. I'm away, I'm traveling, I'm on vacation, I'm busy, I'm not busy, I'm too busy. Every minute that passes decreases their leverage, and they are taught how to increase their profit without a penny of additional expense of just running out the clock. So what do we do? Number one is get all the information, right? Make sure that you have a lease, the original lease from 1986, which was assigned to you in 1992, which was assigned again, etc. All of that is where the real meat and potatoes live. Make sure that you've really figured out what those long-term goals look like. Am I going to be the next Dr. Eric Roman and create the next DSO? What does that look like for you? Do I want to just, do a one or two location sweet spot? Number three is understanding where those risks live, having the data, making sure that before you've done anything, including even picking up the phone and calling the landlord, you should have looked at this as a full, carefully choreographed game of chess. Then negotiate the financials, then the business clauses. So many, all too often, just, hey, Mr. Landlord, what are you going to charge me this time? So, from that perspective, we'll have some additional polls for Dr. Roman's piece, but what I would suggest is if you even have an inkling in terms of what may be hidden in the lease, or what are some of the key red flags that are or could impact your saleability, or even if you're curious about demographics, rent, all those sorts of components, what I would certainly advise is um, schedule a quick time. We're happy to schedule and support you and make sure that we are not running into a situation where you are finding yourself into a challenge, last but not least. So, on that note, appreciate your time. From that perspective, Dr. Roman, I will pass it to you,
Passing
sir.
of the baton. Thanks.
Passing of the baton. So, people, scalability, You've seen it all. You've got the scars to prove it, Dr. Roman. So
I got a lot of scars. I even got
take
some missing hair. That's why I grew my hair out, Eric. You see everything loud and clear here, ready to rock
live
and
and
roll?
clear.
Hey, listen, first thing, when we get done at the end, I've got some QR codes. If you hate QR codes, go to dentalassociategrowth.com/primer dash download. It's my free gift for you guys today. And there's even one more expansion checklist that I could send you, things that I've used to decide whether or not it was the right time for growth. But this is really about dentists because everybody thinks like when we're growing locations, oh, you got to get the doors open, get that other stuff. And I'm going to make a case, and whether you agree or disagree, you can argue with me in the Q&A afterwards. I'm going to make a case that if you really want to expand successfully and add locations, dentists must be a portion of that. I think Captain Obvious would figure that one out, but let's talk a little bit more about why. Um, Expansion can be ridiculously high stakes. And I mean, you might be excited to think, hey, look at how much more impact we can have on our patients, or the additional revenue, maybe the additional equity value of our company, or the profitability, or maybe my spouse will just think more of me because I have 3 locations instead of 2, or 1 instead of 2. The truth is, and I am a big fan of expansion. I will tell you in a moment about my expansion based life. But it is possible that you could expand something that you don't want to expand. You could be adding a significant amount of chaos, pain, and loss. In fact, the road is littered with people that expanded and then unfortunately contracted in the process because the right things weren't in place. Hey, yes, it says here that I opened a dozen practices. I have built more than a dozen practices from the ground up. They call that de novo or greenfield. Um, I've built 2 different dental groups, and I have also done acquisitions and all the other things. Um, my last group grew from 0 to 40 million in about 5 years, which was really neat from the ground up. I've also screwed up absolutely everything, whether it's leases, whether it's acquiring dentists, whether it's how I've managed my team. In the time since I was a DSO operator, I've had the pleasure and maybe the responsibility of coaching now over $1 billion in annual revenue of groups. And so what do I do now? Well, now I operate the only company in the world that is focused on developing dental associates and the clinical leadership systems that somebody inside your company needs to take the absolute best care of and find those great associate dentists. So here's a little statistic that changed everything for me. The statistic is that the average dentist, and there's even statistics that say it's less than this, the amount of time an associate's can stay with you is 12 months. 12
Oh,
months. After a lot of work. And so if you're expanding locations, you have to expand dentists. But are you really expanding dentists if the dentist you have there is only going to be there 12 months? Or worse, let's talk about contractual agreements with dentists, Eric. Perhaps your dentist that you put in there doesn't say 6 months, stays 12 weeks and gives you a notice and says, I'm out. You gave me the ability to get out on 2 weeks. Now what are you going to do? And
or
the truth,
worse, or
or
worse, tries to open up a space across the street, or right, and wants to
literally
bring all their
happening right
patients.
here in my backyard. I'm supporting a dentist who that's happening to. And like they're already $80,000 into their legal battle over this and still nobody's won. You know, that might be bad, but what about the dentists that actually stay in the practice but don't perform? I think a lot of us have experienced and seen that. I call it the silent profit leak. The silent profit leak. And what do I mean by that? Like, what is the actual cost of turnover versus underperformance? Well, I want you to think like everybody thinks, oh, well, when I don't have a dentist, like maybe I pay a headhunter and it costs me 15,000 to find another dentist. No, there are a ton of additional costs. The first additional cost is who in the heck is covering? Or worse, Nobody is covering when you don't have a dentist. Or what about the profit leak where the dentist has already decided they're out the door? So all of a sudden they're not really putting any time. That's going on right around the corner over here right now. They're like, yeah, I really don't care to do any additional work. So all of a sudden a dentist that was producing 80,000 a month is producing 20,000 a month. Where's that other revenue going? Where are those patients going? When you're having leaks in your dentist, guess what? Your patients that are getting crappy treatment, or maybe this is the third associate they've seen. Now they've decided, I'm going to go to a different practice. Or worse, your team members decide the same thing. It's always another dentist. I don't know why we're even doing this. This is not worth it. Then you've got the training costs, the onboarding costs. And if you don't have those costs, you have a different problem. You don't have training or onboarding. Um, it just keeps getting worse. And think about, okay, so you're covering for them and you do a wonderful job. What are you when you're covering for them, what are you now not doing that you were intending to do? Whether it's enjoying your life or whether it's supporting other people in your company and growing. But underperformance. When you have a dentist, when your average dentist is producing 80,000 a month and you have a dentist producing 40,000 a month, you have a gap of 40,000 a month of potential that's not being realized. When that dentist sees a patient, less comes out of it. And you often don't get that money back. We have one of our clients who has calculated that dentist underperformance alone, as they ran the numbers across their company, is well over $1 million a year. And so for most fast growing businesses, dental businesses, like over the next 5 years, this is probably a $10 million problem. Like it's just between all of those things. If you're growing quick, this is an issue. So, whew, doing the math
So
kind of
is
sucks.
so maybe just to pry into that a little bit, and again,
You can pry, baby.
the Q and A is open. Feel free to
Okay.
ask some questions. We'll have some Q and A towards in the end. But what does it boil down to? Is it a training? Is it a hand speed issue? Is it hey, I don't want to be into a DSO
It's
and being
all of
forced to
the above.
sell and
It's mindset and belief before it's any of those things. It's a system that's trained them on the wrong definition of success as a dentist, Eric. Then it's the skills. It's the actual, you know what? Every day, I just went to Utah Jazz game last night, and every day those guys spend hours a day before they show up focused on three things: dribbling, passing, and shooting. No matter how long they've been in the league, no matter how long they've been working on it, they individually have coaches working with them for hours a day on dribbling, passing, shooting, dribbling, passing, shooting. What are the dribbling and passing and shooting of dentistry? Guess what? Even if you know what they are, we as dentists don't work on it. And so, Eric, like mindset, understanding the profession, understanding what the fundamental success indicators are, and then we get to the hands. Then we get to like their capability and capacity to do a great crown prep. And I mean, it's so funny though, because everybody thinks this is a CE problem. We've had great CE in dentistry for 200 years. If CE was the solution, we would not have a problem. So what is it? Well, that's my life. It's my life story. Um, what are we actually dealing with? Right? Like to your point, what a lot of us sit there and think is, Eric, like, I just can't find good associates, or dentists just don't give a crap anymore. Our associates don't care. And you know what? There's just not any out there. It's this generation. I hear that one an awful lot. Like,
the
it's this
millennial dentist,
generation.
they
The
say.
stupid millennials and Gen Z, they ruined everything. Or worse, I work with a lot of DSOs that come to me and they're like, you know what? Screw it. We've just decided we're going to deliver subpar dentistry and accept that turnover is inevitable. So we're just going to have a big front end and a wide open back end. That's it. Kind of heartbreaking. But you know what? I believe that stuff is a choice. I believe that that's a choice because I believe the real truth, Eric, is that we don't have systems for how we're actually supposed to be doing this. We just like kind of ran too fast and didn't build the protocol for how you do it. There is a system for how you do a great crown prep. Now, we might have different systems for it, but then when you ask somebody that has associates, what's your system for how you take great care of your associates? They're like, I don't know.
But to play devil's advocate, the question is, right? How much training did you have in dentistry school, right? Is across the
Zero.
country.
Listen,
Yeah.
I'm not placing the blame. I'm just solving the problem. Like If we and you know what? That's what we love to do in dentistry, because we love to point fingers. But like at the end of the day, we've just got to build a pathway to a better future. I find that people don't have clear standards. I find that like I have not encountered I in the last year alone, I've worked with well over 100 associates, helping them to grow and helping them to be better at what they do. And I have found that not a single one of them, when I ask them what dribbling, passing, and shooting is in dentistry, they have no idea. And like they try, and it's like something off in left field, like a good crown prep. I'm like, it's actually not. They don't know the recipe. They also, you know what? Our dentists don't actually know how to grow. Nobody ever trained them to do that. They were trained to follow rules and fulfill requirements. They weren't they weren't necessarily trained to know how to grow. So my premise here, it's not an associate problem. It's a systems problem. And let me show you what this actually means. I have three principles. Not going to over explain these things, but to me, these are the three things that separate the practices that scale well in expansion from the ones that struggle. I'm going to start with the most counterintuitive one, and that is people before locations. And the truth is, most groups are actually doing this backwards. They decide, I'm going to add this next location. Woo, signed the lease. Here we grow again, right? But in our business, what we did, actually, you know what that is? That's like putting the plane in the sky and then trying to find the pilot. That's what it is when you grow the location before you grow the people. What did this actually look like in practice for me? I only built new locations with dentists that weren't just experienced, that were experienced with me. I took my best dentists and I put them in my new locations with a stable base of team. My best manager, new location. My best and my most seasoned hygienist. They all went there together and they formed the kernel to establish that culture there. And you think, oh, but what about my last practice? If what they're leaving behind isn't sustainable, you have a different systems problem, right? Like, so take the good ones and start it. You know, the other thing that I will say is that we already had documented strategies, performance expectations, how we meet, key performance indicators. All that was in place first before we opened the new office. And I like, if you have to train people on those things, at least you know what you're training from. What I find most people do is they just open, they're like, oh gosh, like we haven't put the systems in over there, or maybe we didn't have them at the old location. We just aren't getting really great results over there. I don't know what's happening. You set yourself up to fail. The last thing that we did is that we planned patient flow in advance. We actually started filling the schedule of our new offices 90 days before the office opened. We actually took patients that were already in our population that might live closer, and we moved them to the new location to fill those schedules. And the other thing that we did is we took 30% of our budget for a new location and applied it to marketing. If you have no patients, you have no revenue. And we made sure that we allocated well more than enough of our money to making sure that this office was going to have patients. If you don't have a recipe to get patients, well, like that's definitely going to be a problem. So that brings me to my second principle. My second principle is that expansion is a leadership function. This is a horrible story. I have a customer I work with that added 12 practices in a single transaction over a year to their now bigger company. And 1 year later, of those 12 practices, four of them had no dentist in them. Four of them had no dentist. What happens to your cash flow? First, how great an investment is that when you pay millions for a location and now it generates nothing, but it still has expensive. What are those expenses, Eric? All the money we spent, our loans, our leases, and they're still keeping a team around because they want to try and like hold the fort down for when the dentist actually shows up. The cash hemorrhage almost sent the company into bankruptcy. And and you know what? Like it was a leadership mistake. Like I love them. And like I told them now, I was like, your leadership capacity wasn't there for the transition that you made. So what does it mean when I say what does leadership really require in this sense? Um, Dentistry is a leadership career. People are paying $500,000 plus to become a dentist. Nobody pays a $500,000 to like just have a job. It's a leadership career. What do I mean by that? Does the team expect the dentist to have some measure of leadership? Absolutely. Do the patients require the dentist to lead? Yes. Case acceptance is a leadership function. We're leading patients in the care that they need. You know what else? Dentists have a significant debt load and they got a lot of crazy financial stuff going on. They have a responsibility to lead their own lives. But as you pointed out, Eric, nobody's taught them how. They do not know how. Dentists do not understand the economics for how this business works. They don't know how to make decisions. They don't even understand the basics of HR or conflict navigation. They don't understand what to do when their patients get pissed, which I know your patients get pissed. My patients always got pissed. They don't even understand what accountability is. Of course, dental schools didn't teach them this. But let me ask you a question. If you already have some associates, do your associates actually understand how the dental business works? To which most people typically say, well, no, not really. Like they always ask these stupid questions, like, can you just pay me more? Or like all that other stuff. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, that same dentist that doesn't understand the business, you took them without that business training, and now you're having them lead their own office. Don't be upset when somebody that doesn't understand a business isn't leading a profitable business. It doesn't happen by nature. Last thing that I will say, that my point about dentists leading their own lives, here is an Eric Roman statistic. I've looked at this over and over again. The number one reason, I'm going to call this the hidden reason that dentists leave. I have never had a dentist say that this is actually not true. The reason associates leave is when the moment that they decide that the life that they've wanted and expected isn't possible in a working relationship with you. That's actually what they blamed it on you. They blamed it on the practice. They blamed it on the low new patient numbers. They blamed it on the stupid things that happened or that they weren't making enough money. But when they really boiled it down, all those things were symptoms of the hard truth. And the hard truth is they didn't leave until they were committed. They can't have the life they want still working in your practice. It's a life issue, which brings us to now, how do we solve this? The only way that we solve these problems are through systems. Systems are the only path. What do I mean when I say a system? Number one, has to be simple. 28 pages of SOPs? No. Give me one page, maybe two at most. It has to be documented. If it's not written down, it ain't a system. It's just like, it's just a hope. Number three, it has to work. So often people are like, oh, we've got the whole SOP manual sitting over here. I'm like, well, how many of these do you use? I'm like, well, I don't know that we use any of them. And if I were to use one, would I get the result that I need? Like, well, I don't know. I mean, we just wrote stuff down. And number four, though, it has to be followed by all the time. It's not a system if people aren't using it. Don't waste your time building systems people don't follow. Let me show you what a complete system looks like in a little bit more detail. So as we're talking about associate dentists and clinical leadership, this is your like, just start here. If you're just at the beginning of your journey with associates or with growth and multiplication, I have two sets of systems here. Systems for associate development and the systems that the clinical leadership needs to have, right? And you can learn, and my download that you're going to get has so much more than that in there, a lot more of the details, things that took me like 3 years and several $1,000,000 of investment to actually build in my own group. Like that's what we have. You can either build and install these yourself, or you can find someone like me to like draft off of and steal from and install and then like help you install them inside your company. So when I say associate development, what's the dribbling, passing, and shooting? Like those fundamentals of success. What is the true case acceptance training so that your dentist, everything in dentistry forever is case acceptance. Dentists love to go chasing new procedures and all sorts of stuff. Doesn't matter if you don't have case acceptance. Everything is case acceptance. What would happen to your income if you improved your case acceptance by 1% per month for your entire career? I'm not kidding you. Do the math. If you did that for 40 years, you'd be a billionaire. I am not kidding. It's crazy. It's not possible because of how it scales. But 1% per month of case acceptance would be life-changing, right? The other thing that every associate must understand is how to lead a practice. And yet we don't. We think, oh, they abdicate responsibility. They say, I'm just an employee. I don't need to like, but they really do want to know. But if your dentist is like, no, I just want to be an employee, then I don't want you as my dentist. I need you to lead the practice because you signed up for it when you decided to become a dentist. You got to have that skill. The last thing our dentists have to have is a system for life leadership. All of these are systems. Inside of my companies, like I have training for my dentists and we check in on practice leadership, on case acceptance, on the fundamentals. We drill the fundamentals every 90 days. So, like for the people that are in our dental associate growth program, we train their doctors on those fundamentals and then we retrain every 90 days and assess how you do before we talk about adding more ortho or anything else. How you doing on the fundamentals? How you doing on those behaviors and things that everybody should be doing every day? Dribbling, passing, shooting. On the clinical leadership side, you have to have standards for how they perform, for like your clinical standards. If you don't have clinical standards, get ready for some crazy crappy dentistry coming out of your practices as you add dentists. Tell me how I know. Um, you're going to have clear role agreements. What do I expect of you and your behaviors as a dentist? How are we going to interact with each other? What are we going to do when things aren't working? Like all that stuff. You've got to be objectively measuring success, scorecards, KPIs, all that stuff. But you probably have scorecards and KPIs, and you're like, oh, my dentist always complained about it. Why do you always talk about productivity? You have to connect the data to how it creates change and impact. If you don't do that, you're not going to get success. Last but not least, you have to do performance reviews. If dentists want to have a relationship with you, even though they're scared about it, you might be scared to have a relationship with them. The truth is, we have to be making each other better. We have to have a relationship. However, systems alone are not enough. I wish I could just say that it was. Systems by themselves, the recipe, systems are a recipe. If you don't have a rhythm, recipe and a rhythm, it's just paperwork. The rhythm is what makes things stick. Take this example. I'm giving you an example here of my check-in rhythm with my dentist. Every week, someone would have a 5-minute check-in just to like, how did the week go? Like, just give me a heads up, anything you need me to know. Every month, me as the like clinical leader for my dentist, I would spend 15 minutes and I would and I'm actually, it's in the documents. I'll show you exactly what I would say. It's like, how you doing? Where's your head? Hey, are your numbers on target? Will you be on target at the end of the month? Cool. What do you need from me? Resources, support to make sure you hit your target. Just a quick check-in, 15 minutes. Every quarter, we would spend 1 hour with a quarterly performance review where we talk about like whether we're going to continue doing this together. And our very best dentists, you don't have to lead this. Our very best dentists are creating their own personal growth plan, giving themselves like, how do you expect to grow if you don't have a plan to grow? 99% of the dentists, the associate dentists I encounter, have no strategy for how they're going to, they just want you to pay them more money. Their growth plan is, can you pay me a higher percentage so that I make more money off less work? But that still wouldn't satisfy them. How are they planning strategically their growth as an individual and a provider? Oof. So, you know, this is an example of a rhythm. Like you got to have the system, the recipe, you got to have the rhythm to follow through with it. You know, and the last thing sitting down there on that slide is that consistent beats brilliant every single time. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't even have to have the best systems. You just have to have them and you have to be consistent with them over and over and over and over and over again. And Eric, that's all I got, man. Here's what I want to give you today. Scan the QR code. Like I said, it is HTTPS, whatever, colon, backslash, slash, slash, dentalassociategrowth.com. And it is backslash primer dash something. I said it at the beginning of it, and I'm not going to say it again because I forgot what it was. But you can just scan this, and I'm going to send you an entire tool that I built that shows in more detail the systems that I feel like are absolutely critical for someone to be ready to grow with doctors. If you've already chosen to grow and you're like, oh crap, now what do I do? Like, connect with me. There, my phone number's in there. The way to connect with me and set up a call is all there. Um, and the QR code, if you don't have it, just tell me and we'll get you all the contact. But I'm excited that you're considering expanding. Like that's what we should want. Cirrus is an incredible and irreplaceable partner for anybody who wants to grow. Nobody else can really do what they do in a systematic nature. If you don't have that person, now you do. And yet, if you don't build the systems you need before you expand and treat the leadership, as we talked about, as a critical function of growth and give those associates a recipe, man, um, if you can do those things, expansion won't be where your practice goes to die. It will be where it can come to life. Thank you, guys. Huzzah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We also made it easy as well. There's a quick little
Oh,
checkbox.
that is
If you would
so
like more
easy.
tools and systems from Dr. Roman, quick little yes on the top. I
I just
mean,
want some questions now, Eric. I want
yes.
somebody to like try and break me and like make me hurt, make me cry, tell me that everything I said was really stupid and that that's actually not true. I'm totally game for that. Sweet.
It's yeah, so please, Q&A is open. I sent a pre-chat, so it should pop up there. Feel free to post it through there as well. It is, it is interesting that in all industries, it's the 6 inches of gray matter in between the ears that does become the biggest challenge. So what I would maybe one question to start things off are, how do I take the first step if I'm not dribbling, passing, shooting? If I'm still figuring out how to get this dribbling things down, um, how do I take that first step? Let
Yeah.
it be I'm just not big enough to add an associate, or I'm too big, but I'm nervous about giving it up to an associate. I'm concerned that I can't replicate it to my next location. Should I just expand into the adjacent suite? What would you say is a key first step?
We're gonna start like stupid hackneyed overused statements. We got to begin with the end in mind. What do you want your life to look like? And then there's a measure of commitment that has to happen, Eric. Nobody's ready. Growth sucks, man. Like growth happens with pain. It's funny. Like I was looking at a picture of one of my daughters, and over the course of the last year, she's grown like 4.5 inches, maybe even more than that. We were looking at her with her best friend, and like she's here on her best friend when they met a year ago, and now they're like eye to eye. And like she's been having like all the growth pains in her joints and stuff. I'm like, well, no crap, you have joint. Growth is hard. Growth requires a measure of stretching. So if you think growth is just going to be like easy street, no, it's going to be hard. But that's the cool part about life. So if it's not something you're excited about, totally stay where you are. You're still going to have problems. I mean, that's like where we live. I've decided I have two problems in my life. I have the problems of staying still, and I have the problems I get when I grow. So I've chosen it's more fun to have the growth problems. That's just, kind of where I sit. And I'll back it out so we can be face to face here.
Sure.
So that's what I would say. Make the commitment. And the commitment means that now you got to solve for the problems. I don't know what to do. I don't know what dribbling, passing, and shooting is for like dental success. Great. Find someone that does. This is the information age. Ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT steals all my ideas anyway. So, we've got so many options out there. It's just committing first. That's my answer, Eric.
Got it.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You
Um,
very
Q&A
much.
is open. Please feel free to throw out some other key pieces. So, the systems, right, or those
Mhm.
difficult types of conversations. Walk
Yeah.
us through some lessons learned
Mm.
because having those one-to-ones, I know even with my own team, right? It's one of those, oh gosh, it's in your own head, and oh, if I sit down, or oh, there's this, are they being passive aggressive? What's their attitude like today, etc. So maybe from that perspective, the actual one-to-one conversations.
Yeah.
When do you go beyond the five? How do you start that process? How do you avoid any perception of awkwardness? And how do you make sure they have some meaning and some meat to them so it's a good practical end result?
You need a great format, first of all. You need somebody to give you a template. If you don't have one, again, ask your bot or ask me. I've refined my meeting template, my structure that I use for my reviews. And guess what? My first 1,000 hours of doing reviews like that, they were uncomfortable. But you know what I did is I entered the danger and I asked for that. This isn't a place where we have to be perfect. It's like saying, hey, little doctor, you know, I, I care about you and I care about seeing you develop. And one of the things I know is going to contribute to that is us having a great interchange on review on a regular basis. So it's going to be uncomfortable for me and uncomfortable for you, maybe at first, but we're going to do this until we get it right. Like we're going to work through the discomfort and get there. I've got this template. Let's talk about it and like knowing where to go from there. So that would be how I would approach it. I will tell you this. Here's my data point. Oh gosh, I've been coaching clinical leaders, clinical directors, coaches for years. And this is really a weird data point, but if you're sitting there right now and you're thinking, I don't want to coach. I don't want to coach and do reviews with my doctors. You are about 80% of us. It's so weird, Eric. Dentists are afraid to have real, open, honest conversations with dentists. It's I get, I can feel it. I get it. I don't know what it is. It's like dental school trained us that we have to be perfect. Like you can't say anything wrong. We can't coach each other because you're a dentist and I'm a dentist. So we're like two smartest people on earth. So why would we coach each other? You just got to lay that stuff. You got to lay that stuff aside. And if that's how your other party feels, though, like it might not be a good working relationship. Might not that other person might not belong in a group, if they're not willing to share and like commit to better. So it's wild. But listen, man, I got my 10,000 hours having conversations like that. I've like you get to a point where it's second nature. And here's I guess here's the other side. Like if you want to grow through associates and multiply that way, but you don't want to have those conversations, we have a problem. So you can solve for this by two ways. One, you can get over it and just learn to be good at the conversations. I had to do that. I had a lot of things. I actually like hated people, like managing people, not like hated people, but I hated managing people early in my career. But I realized I couldn't build the group I wanted to build without a lot of people. And so I had to eat the frog and do the hard thing. And I had to get really good at managing people. But the second thing you can do, and this just costs you more money, is you got to pay somebody else to do it. So, like, those are your choices. But what you can't do is expect people to grow if nobody's overseeing the growth. That's like that in basketball terms is like just throwing the ball over your head backwards randomly, not knowing where the basketball hoop is and hoping that it lands in there. You got about 360 degrees of no.
So, on
So,
that vein, last question to the office managers, right? A lot of it of associates, but what about this for the rest of the team? Where does the office manager fit in? Gosh, I put him or her in place to be managing all this for me and deal with the hygienist that didn't want to come in, or that Sally didn't like Jenny's music that was going through and handling all this stuff for me. Why? This is just more for me, Eric. Why don't I have an office manager to do some of this for me? Or how can they do some of this for me?
and I do believe they can do some of this for you. But the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cultivate a healthy relationship between the practice manager and the associate. That's going to have to be established and designed by you. That means they're going to have a meeting rhythm. They're going to have rules about how they communicate because you know what a lot of dentists are like, well, I don't take commands from an office manager. She doesn't have an advanced level degree. Like she doesn't know what a margin is. And and so if you don't cultivate and break that divide, oftentimes the dentists are like, I'm not submitting to this. Actually, it's one of the biggest arguments against DSOs. Well, I have some non-college age person that I respond to. That's not acceptable for me as a dentist. And like, they might actually know a lot more than you. I'll actually even make an argument they might be smarter than you. They just didn't choose to go to dental school, but you don't know that for a fact. Like this isn't a measurement. But so Eric, I believe that our managers can do a lot of that. In my business, my managers handled the 5 minute check-in. My managers handled that 15-minute check-in. I also checked in once a month with my dentist just because the conversation they'll have with me is different than the conversation they'll have with the manager.
Hmm.
And so as much as you all want it off your plate, we dentists like talking to other dentists about dentist things, and when my dentist has dentist questions, the manager isn't going to answer them. The managers were really good about saying, hey, my job's to hold you accountable for these things and to make sure you have the tools you need. And one of those tools is you need to catch up with Dr. Roman. Do you want me to set up the time for you to talk, or do you want to set it up? Can I expect for you to have that set up by the end of the day today? Great. If not, I'll go ahead and set up a time tomorrow for you. Right. Like, so, a little bit of support and accountability there, but knowing what are the things that only you as another person should be talking about with them that maybe not appropriate for that manager.
Excellent. Perfect.
Yeah. It's like I've done this before.
Can't thank you enough, Dr.
Yeah,
Roman. It is
man.
a absolute pleasure. I've so many interesting topics that can apply to all different businesses, Cirrus or otherwise. For those of you that have just joined for the first time, thank you. We try to do as many amazing speakers, amazing topics, etc. The big theme is you're not alone in all of this, and do what you do well. Your time being chairside is so valuable. Leverage those that have done it before, that have the playbook, right? That have the T-shirt and help leverage from those because God knows your time is far too valuable to try to figure this stuff out for yourself. So, great
That has the
resources.
playbook, that has the stuff, and has the scars. Also, that has the
Exactly.
scars too. That's me.
Exactly. Right. The old
Yeah.
adage, right? Things you do once or twice in a lifetime,
Yep.
outsource. Things you do three, four times a year, do it yourself.
And
But
you got the lease scars. I got the practice scars. Baby, between us, there's a whole human in here. So
love
thanks
it.
for having me tonight, Eric.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Hopefully to see you at the next mastermind. And thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate
All
it.
right. Oh, I love it. We got
There's
more
the
work
little
than
guy.
wow. That's how I like it. Yeah. See
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.